And I feel like I'm going to be reading fanfiction until I turn 60 or 70 or beyond. Hello everyone! I said before that I would never become a booktuber. Here we are. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Fifi and I film a lot of makeup and travel videos, but there has been no travel and no reasons to wear makeup at home and at work. So I haven't been doing a lot of those, but what I've been doing a lot is reading. This video is going to be about my first quarter reads, so the books I've read from January to April. If you want to skip to the books, please by all means go to this timestamp. I will just be rambling in the first half of this video about how I got back into reading. So if you're interested in that, let's go. My entry back into the book world was YA. If you're not into YA, as I said in like a previous booktube-ish video, I mentioned that I got back into reading YA and I realized that that's not for everybody. It's very cliche. There are some problematic themes that have been going on in the past years when it comes to YA, and it's such a contentious genre, but it's what feeds the soul. You know, I honestly feel like YA feeds the soul when you're feeling lonely or bored, or you just need a bit of adventure or romance or a little bit of spice in your life. YA is the way to go, which is why I picked up some of my favorite YAs from back when I was in high school and I started leafing through them, and that is how I got back into reading. It wasn't easy. I definitely wasn't like I picked up this book and suddenly got back into it. It wasn't like that. The first book I picked up in 2020 was Harry Potter, and it took me so long to finish all 7 books. I was basically in a 5-year reading slump. I stopped reading for leisure when I got into college. My major requires a lot of heavy reading, so reading for leisure became the last thing I wanted to do. When you're required to do things, that's what makes it very to do. But throughout that 5-year reading slump, I did stop reading books for leisure. However, I did not stop reading fanfiction. Yes, this video is for people who are trash. I never really stopped going to AO3, Wattpad, fanfic.net, Tumblr. I never got over that phase. I started when I was in high school. I am now a working adult and I'm still here. I'm still here. And I feel like I'm going to be reading fanfiction until I turn 60 or 70 or beyond. In 2020, I revived my Tumblr and got back into Harry Potter fanfiction, which kind of made me curious about the world again. I was yearning for it. I wanted to explore it again and, you know, take a reread. If you want to get back into reading, here are a few tips, you know, from my experience. Get your favorite books from the past, especially books you haven't picked up in so long or have never reread. Wonderful thing about stories is if you read them in different points of your life, it's always a different story. You know it by heart, you know the plot, you know how it ends, but it touches you in different ways, and especially in the particular circumstances you're in, like currently. When I reread Harry Potter, it was a completely different experience. I cried in different parts. I now have new favorite characters. I now hate other characters I didn't think I hated before. It was an experience, so I suggest you pick up your old favorites. Doesn't have to be YA. I'm just saying it worked for me. The whole YA trip worked for me. It doesn't have to be for you. I finished Harry Potter and I started to crave more books and crave more stories. I started going back to my Goodreads account that I've never touched since 2013. 13. I started watching booktubers, and then eventually I started a book club with my friend because we wanted to, you know, hold each other accountable and share our thoughts about books that we read. It was a trip. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be here on this train. A lot of people are getting back into reading nowadays, which is amazing. The book industry deserves to boom again. I remember before it was at its peak and then it died down because of technology, but now, you know, in the pandemic, we're sick of technology. I don't know about you, but I'm just sick of technology. I just want good old books back and just read. That is how I got back into reading. Let's dive in to my first quarter reads. So I read a total of 13 books in the first 4 months of 2021, and like I mentioned, I picked up Harry Potter first. So the first 3 books in my 2021 are the last 3 books of the Harry Potter series. So we have Order of the Phoenix, Halfblood Prince, and Deathly Hallows. I'm not gonna talk about each book one by one because it's gonna take long. If you don't know what Harry Potter is about, where have you been? It's about this wizard. He is destined to defeat the Dark Lord of the wizarding world. It's a classic. It's also a very contentious series because of she who must not be named. It's called the Harry Potter series by Daniel Radcliffe to me. I cannot deny how much this changed my life. I remember I was going through a rough, like everyone, a rough grade school, middle school, life. I was having a crisis in my head. I didn't know I was having a crisis at that time, but this got me through it. My mom is a big fan. She dragged me into this, so everyone can blame her. I guess it just had this big impact on me as a child that it continues to impact me every time I reread it. So I've discovered so many things about the characters here. This is my favorite, as you can see with all the tabs. Order of the Phoenix is my favorite because a lot of Harry's inner turmoil as a chosen one started to show in this book. My second favorite book is The Half-Blood Prince because I'm a Henny shipper and I think you should be too. It's not a perfect series, you know, there are things that are questionable that I have now realized rereading it as an adult, but it's still so important in my life. I think if you are fond of adventure and magic and just escaping this present day, read Harry Potter. If you haven't, if you already have, reread it. It's a different experience. The next book is When Breath Becomes Air by Kalanithi. This is my first memoir ever. I've never actually read a memoir or an autobiography in my life. I'm a child. I love reading about fantasy and magic and, you know, alternate universes, sci-fi, you know, all those things, but real life is just a bit of a stretch for me. I read books to escape, not to enter the real world. I realized I have to start embracing the real world in stories, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did. So When Breath Becomes Air is about Paul. He is a neurosurgeon who faced stage 4 lung cancer. It's not a spoiler that he died, right? Honestly, don't know how people even review memoirs because it's about someone's life, and how do you critique someone's life? I don't know, maybe I'm just not I'm not a very good critic in the first place. I am new to memoirs, so I don't know how to critique this, but it's so good. It was not just about death, it was about living life and finding the meaning of life through this person. Paul, as a neurosurgeon, of course, when you're a doctor, you grapple with death, you fight mortality, you do whatever you can to, you know, prolong life. But once you're in the position of facing your imminent death, there were a lot of tears. There were many tears. I'm someone who doesn't particularly love reading or consuming anything too sad, but this wasn't just sad. It was, yes, it was heartbreaking, but it also gave me so much life. I highly recommend it if you've never read anything about illnesses, because I personally have not consumed any type of like whether movie or book that is related to people with illnesses, because as I said, I'm just averse to sad things. I don't like making myself sad. But as a growing adult, I kind of realized that there's so many things about illnesses and people who are sick that we don't understand, and we will never understand until we experience it ourselves. But there is so much we can do to at least try to, and this book is a way. Next, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, was this a read. This is definitely a reading slump pick. If you are in a reading slump right now and you have not had the energy to pick up a book, pick this one up because it will get you out of it. I swear, I swear, I swear, I swear, I swear. So this book is about A-list celebrity Evelyn Hugo, who is in the book at present time around 75. I might be fake news. She's old now. She's had 7 husbands, and she's always been very private and quiet about her personal life. Now she is ready to share her story with the world to this writer named Monique Grant. Evelyn chose her for some magical reason to write her story. And she, for the first time ever in history, is going to be recounting the story of her life with her 7 husbands. And it is a roller coaster, you guys. It's drama filled, it's sexy, and it's such a good thing to pick up when your imagination is going dull, because you kind of step into old Hollywood. All the glitz and glam and flashing lights. I swear to you, it's a type you cannot put down, because every chapter ends with a cliffhanger. And you just have to keep reading and reading and reading and reading and reading, and it will drive you insane if you don't know the ending. So, reading slump pick, definitely number 1 on the reading slump pick. Highly recommend. The next 2 books is very familiar. If you've watched my previous video, I have already sobbed about this. Of course, it's the 6 of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. The series came out on Netflix last week. If you haven't seen Shadow and Bone yet, watch it. Please stream it so we get a season 2. These 2 have got to be my favorite, one of my favorite series of all time. If you don't know what it's about, 6 of Crows is a story of 6 misfits who basically go on a heist for a huge sum of money. So it's a world, Leigh Bardugo created her own universe. Our 6 misfits live in a country called Ketterdam. They have to journey to the north, kidnap somebody, kidnap/rescue somebody that is held captive by the Fiordans. And if they don't rescue this person, it could mean great danger for the Grisha. So the Grisha are essentially people with powers. Some of them can control different elements, so earth, wind, fire. Some of them can control your pulse, energy, heart, like your heartbeat, and some can control metal and other material things. If they don't rescue/kidnap this person that they're supposed to be, you know, after, the fate of the Grisha will be at stake, and 2, they don't get their money. And money means a lot to these 6 kids. They're kids, essentially, because they're like 16, 17, but in the TV series, they aged them up, which I kind of appreciated, because this is a very, I personally, if I had to categorize these books, they wouldn't be YA. It's a bit grim, not a bit, it's grim. So I'd probably classify it as new adult. The characters here, I am in love with. I'm so invested in them. The Grishaverse has been my entire personality for the past few months, if no one has already noticed. This sequel especially, Crooked Kingdom, I thought there wouldn't be anything better than Catching Fire as a sequel. I was proven wrong. This is probably the best sequel ever. Yes. Yes! Yes! Crooked Kingdom. If you want to know more about Six of Crows and what I think about it and the parts where I cried, click on this video. If you don't have to, I was a mess. It was a whole breakdown. Yes. I'll move on because I won't shut up. I won't shut up. And then we have Normal People by Sally Rooney. It's about two people who are very, very, very much attracted to each other, and you go through their journey of the push and pull of the attraction they have, but they're just in such different circumstances that it makes it hard for them to, you know, they keep gravitating towards each other, but there are just so many external and internal ongoings that it almost seems impossible. I honestly don't know how to feel about this book yet. Until now, I haven't decided if I like it or not. I don't hate it, but me personally, who is into a lot of fantasy fiction, sci-fi, mystery, kind of when I'm faced with contemporary literature, which is very straightforward and very realistic, it kind of takes me aback, and this one was no exception. I guess I just wasn't able to grasp the point of the book, because when I read something, I'm just like, oh, okay, this happens. Okay, this happens because of this, and this happens because of this. But with this one, and with a lot of contemporary literature, sometimes the point isn't glaring. Or maybe that was the point, you know? Maybe it was really about the journey of these two people and their push and pull, trying to bridge each other together, but at the same time, being swallowed by the tide. But this was painful. It made me feel, which I love, because, you know, that's what we look for in books. We want to feel things. I personally love angst. I love delicious angst, which is why I read fanfiction. This was a different kind of angst. You know when you read angst and your heart just clenches? This made my heart like curl into itself, because the angst was so frustrating, and there was physical pain. It was very detailed when it came to scenes, felt very human. Yeah, I recommend. I think this is not for everyone, but a lot of people would appreciate it. I took a fantasy break with Normal People because after I read that, I automatically dived into Shadow and Bone. I read Six of Crows first because it was the one that was highly reviewed and highly, highly, highly recommended by my favorite booktubers and my friends. I read Shadow and Bone second because of the show. I wanted to keep up with the show. I was excited because they were incorporating the Six of Crows characters, but of course I wanted to know what the story was going to be about. I have a short review of Shadow and Bone on my Bookstagram. If you want to follow me on Bookstagram, it's this one right here. No pressure. I'm going to be doing a whole Grishaverse video, so I won't go into these as much, but basically it's the same world as Six of Crows, so there are Grisha. The main conflict is this thing called the Shadow Fold. It's this big chunk of wall of darkness and shadows dividing a country into two. I remember not liking it as much when I first read it because I just came out of Six of Crows, and Six of Crows absolutely blew my mind. This one was a big like change for me because it's in first person and it's a different trope. So it's the chosen one trope, so it's like Harry Potter, Percy Jackson. To banish the Shadow Fold, they need a sun summoner. So our main character, Alina Starkov, is the sun summoner. She is discovered to be the sun summoner, and her destiny is to destroy the Shadowfold, and she journeys through 3 books to succeed. The writing is very middle grade in a sense that I would have probably enjoyed this if I read this when I was younger. If I read this in high school, I probably would have I don't think it helped that Six of Crows hyped me up so much and raised my expectations off the roof, that this was kind of just okay to me. First I was like, I don't like it. But now that I think about it, and then I've leafed through it again before watching the show, it's actually a good read. It's a good binge read. It's an easy binge read. I enjoyed it a lot. There were many things that I didn't want to happen, but happened. I think if you've read the books, you know what I mean. But I'm just gonna talk about this in a different video. If you're wondering if you should read this before you watch the show, I recommend reading it. You don't have to, but I recommend reading it just to get that full experience, because watching it as a reader was so marvelous. Immaculate experience. And yeah, there. I have 2 more books with me, and one of them is also a fantasy. I know you guys are sick of me saying fantasy, but it's way up my alley. It's my genre. The second to the last one I read is A Court of Thorn and Roses. Why did I read this? Book talk. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling where the Beast is a fairy and Beauty is, or Belle, is a huntress. So she accidentally kills a fairy. Someone barges into their house and demands an exchange. So you killed one of ours, we have to take a life. But they didn't kill her, they just brought her back to fairyland. You know, it's Beauty and the Beast. So Belle goes home to the Beast in exchange for her father's life. Basically, it's something around those lines. It wasn't awful. It wasn't also like a life-changing. It was more of a nostalgic read, because this is probably something I would have read when I was in high school. It's not my favorite, but I enjoyed it. People keep saying that you need to read the second book to fully enjoy the plot, which I plan on doing. I have it right there, over there. But yeah, it was more of the nostalgia for me. Characters are okay. The main girl, Farah, is quite good. I can't wait to read the second, because that's where everyone is, you know, that's where all the hype is. So I will update my ACOTAR feelings. I probably will make a whole video if I finish the entire series, because I have nothing else to do. Our last read of the first quarter of 2021, I finished this last week, and it is Educated by Tara Westover. This is my second memoir. My first was When Breath Becomes Air. This is honestly a life-changing book, in my opinion. A lot of people are saying that it seems like such an embellished story, that, you know, a lot of people are doubting how true it is. I don't want to think about it. I just want to take what I can get from Tara's life and not think about whether it was real or not, because I learned so much. This story is about Tara, who grew up in a survivalist Mormon family in Idaho. Her parents don't believe in hospitals, doctors, in school. They didn't send their kids to school. They didn't believe in the government. So they believe that the government is an evil entity that basically spreads brainwashing propaganda. They're not wrong. It's basically a coming of age story, and you grow up with her, you journey with her through her father's very extreme belief about God, and her mother's kind of submission to the household. And it's very eye-opening, especially in a society where we value education to a high such a high level, especially in the Philippines. But this book, you can also see the classist kind of perspective of education, and how, you know, it's a very exclusive thing, which shouldn't be. And it just takes us with Tara as she realizes how much she wants to learn and how much she wants to outgrow her environment, and how important it is for her to let go of things that are not good for her life. It broke my heart so many times, but also just it was a wow, I can't even describe it. If you don't want to read it, listen to it. It's a great listen. Highly recommend. An immaculate read. And there we have it. Here we are at the end of this video. That was a lot. This is what I miss about making videos, just talking. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you've made it to the end, thank you. I will be posting hopefully more of my reads. I love just sitting down and talking about books. This is a new form of therapy, and this has been great. Thank you guys so much for swimming by. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. Like this video if you want to. Tell me your reads. Give me some recommendations. I want to add me on Goodreads over here, and then follow me on my Booksta. I love Bookstagram. People, just come to me, be my friends. Tell me your reads. Please give me more recommendations. And yeah, thank you everyone. Have a great day, night, afternoon. Goodbye.